All right, get ready. Because today, we're going deep, deep into an ancient world.
Ancient kings,
Yeah, ancient kings, epic battles, shocking betrayals,
all found.
all in the book of Second Samuel.
Second Samuel. Yeah, we're talking about a story where a king chosen by God faces the consequences of a very human choice, and it changes everything.
Oh, okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
We've got this source from Bible Project, and it's a really insightful overview of Second Samuel.
Yeah, it's like a cheat sheet
It is
to understanding this pivotal chapter.
in the Bible's grand narrative.
Exactly.
So at the core of this story, we have King David,
Warrior, a poet.
leader, and a man,
Oh, yeah. Wrestling with.
the same flaws and temptation
Yeah, that we all face.
we all face. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Okay, so, but before we get into all of that, before
Yeah.
we get into David's dramatic rise and fall,
Right.
let's set the stage a little bit.
Yeah,
This book picks up right where 1 Samuel left off.
that's right.
We've already met Samuel the prophet who anoints kings. We've seen Saul, the first king of Israel, rise to power.
Rise and crash.
And then, yeah, crash and burn because of his pride and disobedience.
Yeah, pride and disobedience, a tragic story.
Really tragic.
It is, yeah.
And then, in the midst of all that chaos, a young shepherd named David emerges. He slays Goliath,
Yeah, he's a hero.
wins the hearts of the people, and even earns Saul's jealousy.
That's right.
Talk about a dramatic entrance.
Yeah.
So in 2 Samuel, we see David stepping into the role of king after Saul's death. And one of the first things he does is mourn for Saul,
That's right.
even though Saul was his enemy.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
It's powerful, I think.
It is a powerful moment.
It reveals a lot about his character.
Yeah, it does.
He's not driven by vengeance or power grabbing.
No.
He's actually capable of deep empathy and even forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. He mourns for his enemy. That's pretty incredible.
It's huge. Yeah, so we're seeing a different kind of leader here. Someone who understands the weight of responsibility and the importance of compassion.
Exactly.
And that compassion,
Translates into how he leads.
it does, yeah.
He unites the 12 tribes of Israel,
Uh-huh.
establishes Jerusalem as the capital city,
Oh, wow.
brings the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence, to the heart of his kingdom.
Wait, hold on. Why is bringing the ark to Jerusalem such a big deal?
Well, think about it. You've got this newly unified nation.
Right.
They're still figuring things out.
Yeah.
Then their king, this military hero that everybody admires, brings this sacred object to their city, declaring it the center of their faith.
Right.
It's a genius move.
Yeah.
Really consolidating both religious and political authority in Jerusalem.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So now we're seeing David at the height of his power. He's beloved by the people, victorious in battle, and seemingly blessed by God.
He's got it all.
But here's where things take a turn.
Yeah, in 2 Samuel chapter 7, God makes this incredible promise to David, a promise of an everlasting dynasty.
Oh, wow.
A future king from his lineage who will establish an eternal kingdom.
No, this is huge, right?
It is huge.
I mean, we're talking about a promise that echoes throughout the entire Bible and ultimately points towards the hope of a Messiah.
You got it.
So it's like the foundation.
It's the foundation of the Davidic covenant. This idea that God will establish a kingdom through David's descendants that will bring peace and justice to the world,
Oh.
but it comes with responsibility.
Like he's carrying the weight of this future hope
Yeah, he is.
in his shoulders.
That's a good way to put it.
And what makes the next part of the story so jarring is that right after receiving this incredible promise, David makes a catastrophic choice.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the Bathsheba incident, right?
We are, yeah.
David commits adultery with Bathsheba and then orchestrates the murder of her husband Uriah to cover it up.
That's right.
It's hard to reconcile those actions with the image of the compassionate, forgiving leader we saw earlier.
It is. It's a brutal reminder that even those we put on pedestals, even those chosen by God, are still human.
Yeah.
They're susceptible to temptation, to pride, to making choices that have devastating consequences.
So what happens next? I mean, does God just sweep this whole mess under the rug?
Well, not exactly. We'll dive into the consequences of David's actions in the next part of our deep dive.
So we left off with David's shocking moral failure, a betrayal of his own values, and a violation of God's law.
And the consequences are swift and far-reaching.
I mean, you can't just commit adultery and murder and expect everything to be sunshine and rainbows, right?
Exactly. David's sin sets off a chain reaction of tragedies that mirror Saul's downfall. His family is ripped apart by betrayal, violence, and rebellion.
We're talking about the story of Amnon, Tamar, and Absalom, right?
Yes, Amnon, David's son, rapes his half-sister Tamar.
It's just,
Absalom, Tamar's brother, takes revenge by killing Amnon, and then Absalom, fueled by anger and ambition, leads a rebellion against his own father.
wow. It's like one tragedy leads to another.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a stark reminder of how one person's actions can have ripple effects that impact generations.
For sure, and it's not just political turmoil. David experiences profound personal grief and guilt. He loses a child. His family is fractured, and his kingdom is threatened.
I'm curious, though, God doesn't just abandon David,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we're still talking about the guy who God called a man after my own heart.
That's a key point. While David faces the consequences of his actions, the narrative also highlights God's enduring faithfulness and forgiveness.
So how does that play out in the story?
Well, we see David repenting of his sin. He pours out his heart to God in psalms of lament and confession, acknowledging the depth of his wrongdoing.
It's like he's coming to terms with the weight of his choices and seeking reconciliation with God.
And despite David's failures, God doesn't revoke the promise made in 2 Samuel 7. That promise of an everlasting dynasty remains in place.
So it's a reminder that God's grace is bigger than our mistakes.
Exactly. Even when we mess up, even when we make choices that hurt ourselves and others, God's love and forgiveness are still available to us.
But it's not like everything just goes back to normal, right?
No, there are still consequences. David's life, even towards the end, is marked by the scars of his past choices.
It's a sobering reminder that actions have consequences even for a king. But there's also a glimmer of hope woven through this whole messy story.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the epilogue of 2 Samuel, where we see a more vulnerable side of David and encounter some of the most profound reflections on leadership, forgiveness, and hope in the entire book.
So we've been talking about David's journey, his rise to power, his devastating fall, and the long road of consequences he faces. It's a story that, I mean, it could leave you feeling pretty cynical about leadership, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to focus on the failures
Yeah.
and lose sight of the bigger picture, but if we stop there, we miss the most powerful message of 2 Samuel.
Which is hopeite. What's so hopeful about a story filled with betrayal and violence and a king grappling with the fallout of his own terrible choices?
Well, it's precisely in those dark moments that the hope shines through. Remember the epilogue with those poems? Reflecting on David's life, they aren't just nostalgic reminiscing. They're infused with this deep trust in God's faithfulness, even when David himself falls short.
You're right. It's like those poems become these anthems of hope,
Yeah.
a reminder that God's promises aren't dependent on human perfection.
Exactly, and that hope isn't limited to David's personal reconciliation with God. It extends outwards, pointing toward that future king, the descendant of David promised in 2 Samuel 7.
The king who will establish an eternal kingdom, bringing justice and peace to the world.
Precisely.
Wow.
This promise becomes a beacon of hope, not just for David's descendants, but for all humanity. It echoes throughout the rest of the Bible, culminating in the arrival of Jesus, often referred to as the Son of David.
So 2 Samuel isn't just some ancient history lesson.
Yeah.
It's a story that taps into our deepest longings
Yeah.
for justice, for reconciliation, and for a world where God's reign is fully realized.
And that's a hope worth holding on to. Even when the world feels chaotic and filled with darkness, David's story reminds us that God is at work weaving a tapestry of redemption that goes beyond what we can fully grasp.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from David's triumphs and tragedies to the enduring power of God's faithfulness and the hope that runs through it all.
Yeah, we've seen how his story reflects the complexities of human nature, the weight of leadership, and the enduring nature of God's promises.
As we wrap up, here's a question to leave you with. How does David's story, this tale of a king, both flawed and favored, impact how you view leadership, forgiveness, and the nature of true hope?
Keep exploring 2 Samuel, wrestle with its challenges, and let its message of hope resonate in your own life.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.